Hello, and welcome to Rough Edges. I'm your host, Sarah Fox. In this podcast, I will guide you through my faith and mental health journey to dispel the stigma surrounding mental illness and to create a voice for those who wish to discover more about these topics. This podcast will not only shed light on mental health issues, but will also reveal the intersection between faith and mental illness. I pray that these themes will bring growth and healing to our communities. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Rough Edges. Tonight, I am joined by special guest Paris Prynkiewicz from the Master Your Mental podcast. Paris is the host of the Master Your Mental podcast, author of Crooked Illness, speaker for NAMI and other mental health organizations, and a huge advocate for mental health. Paris uses her story to inspire and uplift others as she continues to work toward becoming a licensed professional counselor. Welcome, Paris.
Yes, Sarah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. You guys, we had the best time. I actually just had Sarah on my podcast, and she was amazing, absolutely amazing. Shared her story, so good. So definitely go check that out. But I'm super excited to be here today and just get into this topic with you.
Yes, I'm so happy to have you, and I had an excellent time on your podcast as well. So, Paris, I want you to tell me a little bit more about yourself. What are 3 things that you absolutely cannot live without?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. So 3 things I cannot live without is my morning meditations to just help me get started with my day, to really kind of, check in with myself and have that awareness. And then also another big thing for me is journaling. So journaling, having a journal, any journal around, just to write out my thoughts, make lists, things that I'm working on, things that I've discovered. So journaling, meditation, and then the last one would probably be these conversations. So conversations just like this is something that I cannot live without, because they've really added so much value to my life, and just by being able to hear other people's stories and their journeys with their mental health and what they've done has really added so much value. So I definitely probably say those 3 right there. So meditation, journaling, and these kind of conversations.
I love that, especially the one about these conversations, because they're good to have, and they're very important as well. So you've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience with bipolar disorder?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I was actually diagnosed when I was 19 years old. So at that time, I was actually hospitalized, diagnosed bipolar, SMI. So for you guys that don't know what that is, it is severely mentally ill, is what that stands for. I was actually put on court-ordered treatment as well. Before that, I was actually misdiagnosed with depression on all kinds of different medications and things like that, and just really struggling in my journey of not knowing how to communicate what exactly it was that I was experiencing and how to really move forward from that. So I would definitely say it was one of the most difficult times in my life, my hospitalization for sure. But once I received that diagnosis, I had mixed feelings. Like I was kind of like, okay, well, then this means I can kind of, maybe learn more about it and see what's going on. And then I was also kind of like scared of it as well, because I didn't know how I was gonna talk about that with people, or I had a lot of fear of like criticism, being judged, and not knowing what to say. And it was pretty challenging for me with all those different things going on. But I think the biggest piece that just made the difference was just trying to get a really solid community around me and support system, and just build from there. And it definitely wasn't easy, for sure. Like I talk all about this in my book. Like I don't leave any details out. I show you guys what my entire journey was like in that hospital. Prior to the hospital, my experiences on and off different medications, what it was like for me to go through periods of being manic. And for those who don't know, just having, really, really high levels of energy and not really being able to like slow down, and you're doing a lot of things at once and you're kind of all over the place. And going from that to periods of depression, right? So find it really, really hard to stay motivated on top of things that you're doing, losing your passions, losing your motivations, just really having a really hard time with that and understanding it. So it definitely was a journey for me, for sure. But what I think changed is just trying to focus more on the solutions than the problems, because that's what I used to do before. Is I focused a lot on what wasn't working and what I did do that wasn't working, and it really kept me stuck for a very long time.
Wow, I actually love the part where you're like, I'm trying to focus on the solutions more than the problems, because a lot of the times it's like we can look at the negative aspects of something, but then we don't see that silver lining behind it. And so I thank you for, sharing your experience with mania and hospitalization and just really becoming one with your diagnosis. And so initially, what was your initial reaction when you first got diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
Yeah, so my initial reaction was a lot mixed. Initially, it was just fear, really, because I actually have, someone in my family who has been diagnosed as well. And I talk about this, like growing up and just having it be a really difficult thing for other people in my family, and, this person not getting along with other people in my family, and just a lot of fighting, a lot of chaos. And I really learned growing up, the reason for that was because my person in my family was bipolar. So I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't imagine what that would be like to actually have that or be that. And then when I got that diagnosis, it really scared me, because I was like, I just felt very almost like out of control. And I just spent so much time focusing on those things that I couldn't control. And what really helped me was just completely just taking on a piece of paper and just writing out different areas of my life that I can control and I can change and I can make better, because that's what helps me. And I think is something that everyone can kind of do is, just kind of look at your relationships, right? So your relationships, your habits, what you do with your time, the environments you spend the most time in, look at all of these pieces. And how do you feel in these moments? Like, how do you feel? Because really for me, I didn't feel good a lot of the time. Like the majority of the time, like, in the things that I was doing, because I was putting myself in a lot of danger, to be honest. Like I was just constantly trying to run away and distract myself from really doing the work on myself, because I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know. I thought I tried. I told myself, well, you already tried this. You already went to different counseling. You already tried all these different things. It's not working. So I basically convinced myself that nothing was going to work, and that was what I needed to change, my mindset.
Wow, that is something that's like really hard to change, right? Because like a lot of the times it's like you try to change your mindset, but then it's like you're going 2 steps forward and like 5 steps back. And so it's really hard to like develop that mindset, but it is doable, and it is something that you can have hope in learning to move forward in your healing journey. So thank you so much for sharing that. And so what would you say is the most challenging aspect of having bipolar disorder?
So I'd probably say the most challenging aspect is just staying consistent with the work, right? So it's not like, I just did this, one time and everything's good. It's a continuous process, right? So every single day, doing the things that got me to where I am. And I still have days where, I get very overwhelmed. And what I realize is one of the biggest challenges is stress, right? So even if it's good stress, right? So something in my life that I'm, dealing with right now for that is, a lot of exciting things, right? But it's a lot of changes. So, me and my boyfriend just got engaged. So we're working on planning our wedding. So that's really exciting. But again, it's like, like planning process. So I have that. And then just trying to stay balanced, right, with everything that I have going on. So that, the podcast, working on my job as well, and then just school full time, and then a lot of different events that I have going on, things like that. So just really making the time for myself and learning how to say no to things and learning how to have breaks, because I can definitely get in the mode where I get very almost hard on myself and kind of like, I guess, like people pleasing, like where I want to do everything and I want to go to everything and I want to support everyone. But then I catch myself getting overwhelmed and burnt out, and then I'm not in a good space. And when you're not in a good space, of course, you guys know what happens. You could possibly end up taking that out on people around you, being in a bad mood, being in a bad situation with your mindset, your thoughts. So it's always comes down, the biggest challenge is just staying consistent with the work, right? So for me, doing those meditations, continuing to get my thoughts out on paper, journaling, and being consistent with therapy. So I know that's a big piece too. And just, continuing to find resources, right? There's so many incredible resources online, a lot of ones that are even free that you can kind of check out, go to different support groups. So that's really what I do, is stay on top of that stuff and make sure that when I do have these moments where I am struggling, very overwhelmed, not in a good spot, that I talk about it, that I journal about it, that I, get into it, because that's just part of the journey, right? We're always going to have that, but it's just doing the work and just staying consistent with it, and then taking breaks when you need to.
Yes, that was amazing. And I had a couple takeaways from what you said, and one, being consistent with the work. That's something that's very challenging. And it's also a little bit discouraging sometimes, because it's like it could seem like you're doing a lot of extra work and then you're not getting the intended result that you want. But then you also gave solutions to that, which is you journal, and you also learn how to take breaks and also how to say no. So those are things that are very important, especially when you want to prioritize self-care. So thank you for that. So on the flip side of all of that, do you think that there are any positive aspects of having bipolar disorder? Why or why not?
Yeah, so I do. And I think one of the biggest positive aspects of it is what we're doing right now on this podcast, having these conversations and really using our stories and our experiences with it to help others, help others out there who might feel like alone and I can't talk to anyone, I can't move forward from this, and they're really stuck. And, because I was once there and I know what that feels like. So this is why I think it's a positive thing, is because we all have things in our life that have happened to us that, wasn't good, and it was a bad experience and very, very, scary, like, being hospitalized and, around a lot of, just around a lot of different situations that were really not good for your mental health. So, and then just being able to speak about it. So having this community, having other people out there who, want to learn more, who want to be part of this and share their stories. And that's what I think is beautiful, is that we're using our mess and we're turning it into a message to inspire others, and we're taking that pain and we're turning it into a purpose for what people can do to move forward, prioritize it, and really work on it. So there's always going to be kind of like like the good and bad with everything, but for me focusing more on what has happened as a result of this, because if I was never diagnosed with bipolar, if I never struggled in the way that I did, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't have written my book. I would not have launched my podcast. I would not be, working with NAMI, going out and, talking to families who have loved ones with mental illness. I wouldn't be doing any of that because I wouldn't have gone through and experienced it. So that's why I'm grateful, because this has really been able to help me help other people.
Yes, I agree. I definitely agree with that. And just like having the positive outlook is very important. And doing things like your podcast and your book, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but just having those things is like something that can really help like you move forward, and it could help you in your healing path and like everything else that goes along with it. So vulnerability is a very big theme that I'm seeing in your life, and is something that helped you not only create your podcast but also write a book. So how did you go about initially telling your friends and family about your mental illness?
So what I did is I actually did it through the podcast, actually. So I started it, and I just wanted to start sharing more because I know that I was kind of getting questions, from people more on mental health kind of stuff. And I would always just say that I was so passionate about it. And, of course, because that's like what a lot of my background is. Like I went to school for it. I'm in school now for that to do therapy. But I never shared my story. I never shared my personal story. And I felt like because of that, I wasn't being fully authentic, because that is the reason why I'm so into talking about these things and helping people, is because I once struggled so much to the point of where I did not think that I was even going to be here anymore, and it was really not a good place. So that's really what it was, is talking about it on the podcast. And then obviously with the book too, like I did have a fear come back too. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know if I should write this, because I never planned on publishing it. I never did until I started the podcast and I started talking to more people, interviewing different people, and they were encouraging me to do it. They were like, I think you should go for it. I think you should tell your story, because the interesting thing is for me, I wasn't just hospitalized. I actually went through that when I was 19, but then when I was 23, I graduated from college and I ended up going back and working at the exact same clinic where I was once a patient at myself.
Oh, wow.
So I got to be on two ends of, like, in two worlds, right? So going from being a patient, struggling so much from inside the walls of the hospital, and then going back and working to help people and help them move forward from that. So that's really what made me realize, like, I need to tell my story. I need to share this, because I've been on both sides. I've seen what it's like, and I know how to help. So, I could either keep that to myself for the rest of my life and, not touch those people who need to hear it, or I could be vulnerable and do it anyway and go for it. And that's what I did. And I'm still doing that every single day and still working on that. So, yeah.
Wow, I think it was really cool that you were on both sides of the spectrum. Like, you were a patient and then you were working at the clinic. So that was really cool. And I also love what you said about you just knew that you had to share your story, Like, you had that inner tug to, like, go out there and be vulnerable. And it was hard, I can imagine, because it's like, when you're putting your life out there, especially on a medium like a podcast or like even writing a book, like that's something that's like very commendable, because it not only touches lives, but it also helps you grow in leaps and bounds. So I thank you for all your work that you do. Your podcast is definitely one of a resource that I use to help me get through my bipolar disorder as well. So your work is not in vain. It is working. It is helping people. So thank you for that.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Sarah, so much. And, you too, same to you. Like, exactly what you're doing is touching many lives and helping so many people. And that's what I love about this is, just being able to, turn this around, right? Because, we could kind of just, really focus on the things that hurt, and we're working in the pain, but we're talking about it, because the more you talk about things, the more it gets out there, the more the message continues to spread, and the more common it becomes. So that way, one day we're going to have a day where, it's almost like talking about the weather. People can just say, oh yeah, like I'm diagnosed bipolar, instead of thinking like, I don't know if I should share that. That's really personal. I don't know if it's okay to do that. But yeah, just making it more normalized and taking that stigma away. So exactly.
Yes. And the stigma. That is very important. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about your podcast. So how did you decide to start Master Your Mental?
So I actually decided to start it. It was pretty funny. So I honestly I remember one day I was just visiting my family, and I was actually walking around outside, and I just pulled up the app here and just hit record and started, because I had this idea. It kept coming back to me of, like, what is this connection between our physical health and our mental health? And, like, what is there a connection? Like, how can we work on both? Like, what does working on one do for the other? So I really wanted to talk about that because that was a big game changer for me. One of the things that I had to change was getting back into working on that, right? So back when I was struggling a lot, I was not working on myself. I was not getting outside, moving my body, doing any kind of workouts. I did not eat well at all. I did not know how to cook at all. Did not know, never really went to like get healthy foods and, just drank a lot. So I was drinking a lot too, just unhealthy, different things like that. So I wanted to make an episode about that. So I got into that topic. And then from there, I just was like, okay, like I want to talk about my journey with bipolar. I want to share that and my experiences with therapy and medications and the hospitalization and just more of that. So that's what I started doing. And that's really what got me to, keep the conversation going, because I wanted to bring other people on and hear about what they did, what worked for you, because that's the thing is I can share, everything that worked for me, but that's not always going to help everyone listening, because sometimes people need, this person's story or this person's message or what this person tried, because maybe I don't know what that is or I've never tried that. So that's really what it is just featuring different solutions to help people out there just discover them.
Yes, I definitely agree. And it's so important to have other people involved, because it's like, it's amazing how you say that, featuring different solutions and different people, because when I started my podcast, I was like, okay, am I going to do this alone? I guess I'm doing this alone. So it's like, I went out and sought guests on a platform called Podmatch, and it was really helpful in terms of like seeing how people are like-minded, and also Instagram is another great platform to find people. That's how we found each other. And so it's been a blessing just to hear other people's stories and for us to come together and share our own progress. So the title in your podcast, it's an acronym. And how did you come up with that idea?
Yeah, so it's funny that you say that, because I actually just went ahead and actually switched it back over. So now it's just Master Your Mental, but I used to have the acronym. So what it stood for is mindset, engagement, nutrition, talk about it, accountability, and love yourself. So those are all the pillars of the foundation of how to master your mental, how to prioritize these things. So I had that as the acronym, but now it's just master your mental without the acronym, just because like a lot of people coming in new don't really know what it is and they're not really sure. So I just decided to take it away, but it's still part of it, right? It's still infused into that, and that's the reason I wanted to incorporate it into the show, because what are the pillars of like healing and recovery and working on yourself? What does that look like? What does that mean? So those are the common ones that I saw in the over 100 interviews that I've done, like those things. So people coming on and saying, I had to work on my mindset. I had to be more engaged with the present moment. I had to work on my nutrition and my health and my fitness, my body. I had to talk about it. So therapy, communication, expressing your feelings, and then accountability. So I had to take responsibility for what I can control, because one of my biggest problems was blaming, right? And saying, oh my gosh, like I'm like this because of this, or this happened because of this, or I can't change because of this. And when you do that, you really do shut yourself down from being able to change, because you already gave the power away. You already said, it's like this and it can't change, because you're putting that responsibility in the form of blame onto someone or something else. And instead, and sometimes that, there are moments where, we can't control everything, but we can control is what we do tomorrow and how we handle or respond to different things. And then the last piece was love yourself. So that goes into our whole thing of self-care. So what does that mean to love yourself? Because that's something that I did not do for when I was hospitalized. I did not love myself. I did not practice self-care. And, all of these pillars together, have really helped me move forward and really help me on the days when I'm, overwhelmed or stressed out, or I'm having a bad day and I'm having a rough moment, or something happens in my life, because we're all going to have those moments where, things happen, and, we lose people close to us. We lose opportunities. We might lose jobs. We might have, like COVID happen, right? All these kind of things. But, it's all about coming together and just, continuing to stay consistent. So that's what it's all about.
Yes, I love that. I love that acronym. And those actually are the pillars of mental health, and like, healing and getting better at, mastering your mental. So it's really good. And so you also wrote a book in addition to starting a podcast. The book is called Crooked Illness. So can you talk a little bit about like what your book is all about and how you went about writing it?
Yeah, of course. So like you said, so the book is called Crooked Illness, and then it's Crooked Illness: Lessons from Inside and Outside Hospital Walls. And it's actually the name of the original name for my podcast, because when I launched my podcast, I didn't know what to call it. And I was writing this book for probably a couple years before the podcast, and I never thought I was going to publish it. I just was typing it. I just was writing it on my computer, like kind of more for myself. And it was called Crooked Illness. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to call the podcast that, because that's what it's about. Is I couldn't see the ways that I was being crooked to my own self and others around me, because I was so blinded by a lot of the pain that came along with the struggles of being bipolar. And then the illness part, obviously, is like mental illness, like having that diagnosis, all these things. So that's really why I wrote the book, is to take everyone on a journey, literally from the beginning. So me back, it's literally 10 years of my life. So when I started struggling from like at 15 years old, right? And talking about and being really open and transparent about going through sexual abuse, right? Going through sexual abuse, going through those kind of different traumas, like what it was like for me and what that did for me, in terms of not being able to communicate it, and then trying to do it and like being shut down and like not supported. So it just was, I wanted to share that, because that was a big part of my experience. And what really, I wanted to explain for people of like, you can go from this place, and you can take your life and change it. And here's what I did. Here's the changes that I made. And it took me years, right? It wasn't like an overnight thing. It took me years of changing my life, my relationships, the places that I went, what I was doing. Like my life now is nothing like it was when I was 19, when I was first starting to struggle, because back then I was living with a facade. And a lot of people do that. A lot of people who maybe they're not even diagnosed yet, maybe they're not even diagnosed yet with bipolar or whatever it is, right? I didn't want other people to like see me struggling, because I didn't want them to be concerned or worried or like, what am I going to do to help her? I didn't want that. So I was like, I just need to like, just move forward, just get over it, whatever. And I would just, do things that weren't good for me, right? Like let's go out all the time. Let's drink, let's party, and like literally just treating my body so disrespectfully, and just, going out with all these different guys and different things like that. And really, not loving myself and not seeing any value in myself. So it was a tough time, but I feel like that's one of my biggest superpowers, is knowing how to give that gift to other women who are diagnosed with bipolar, are struggling with it. They don't know what to do. That's what I feel like I'm called to do. So using my story for that, instead of hiding it inside myself like I did for a while.
Wow, that is very inspiring, because it's just like you said, it's progress. It's not something that happens overnight. Progress is not linear. Sometimes it looks like ebbs and flows in just everyday life. And so I just love how you were able to just take that progress that you were making and turn it into something so profitable and something so just very amazing to help other people. So that's amazing. I really love that. And so I want to ask you if you had some advice or words of encouragement for somebody who was struggling to manage their bipolar disorder, what would that be?
So my words of advice and encouragement would be to first get that down, right? Like journal, get it however you express yourself, right? So first, get it out there so you can better understand the awareness of it, like what's going on, why am I feeling this way, what factors are involved with this, and just getting that all out there and down on paper, and then looking at your support system, right? So who do you have in your life who knows you well, who knows what you are going through, experiencing, that you feel like you can speak to, you feel safe with this? If you don't have any of those people, then what I would definitely say is there's an amazing resource, it's called NAMI. They're all online. They have free support groups that people can attend. They have them on Zoom. They have them at different locations where people can go and come together and speak about their experiences and really help each other. And that's what I think is amazing, is it's such a supportive environment, and it really does help when you get around people who have similar experiences, who are going through similar things, who want to come together and like support one another. So I would say that, get it out, see what's going on, gain awareness of it, and then get around those communities, right? So start there, and just start building from there, right? Start learning more, right? Reading more books, listening to more podcasts, like getting your hands on anything you can find to help you with, work on any solutions, right? So, looking at the things that you've tried that haven't worked, just learning about new ways of doing things, right? Or different things what changes you want to make in your life. So, I would say kind of start there, start small. You don't need to like do all of stuff at once, but, start small. But yeah, just definitely, kind of get that journaling out for the awareness, support, right? Support groups, support system, and then seeing what changes that you feel like you need to make in your life, and then kind of making a little plan of like how to go about doing that.
Nice. I love the action plan part of that. Like, just having a plan is just so important. And also support groups. Those are very important as well. So thank you for bringing that up. And so my final question would be, since this season is all about resilience and mental health advocacy, I want to ask you, what does mental health advocacy mean to you?
So mental health advocacy what it means to me is just continuing to build up that support system, not only in yourself, but for other people. So continuing to make those connections, and like you brought up such a good point of Instagram is a good place, right? So you can literally go, or even like anywhere online, right? We have such the power of this stuff in our fingertips, right? To be able to look up, hashtag, bipolar disorder, find other people, build that base, build that community, and then partner with them, like what we're doing, right? So coming together, collaborating, sharing our stories, sharing our experiences, and that's what I think makes advocacy so important. Is we're continuing to get the message out there. We're continuing to have these conversations, put different things together to help people. So, just continuing to build that up. And, it really teaches you a lot too, because you always learn so much from everyone that you talk to, everyone that you come in contact with. So, you're always learning, you're always growing. And, it doesn't hurt to have more people out there that, experience things similar to you and that you can talk to. So just doing the work and staying consistent with it.
Yes, that is amazing. And that's all part of mental health advocacy. Well, Paris, I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was such a pleasure and an honor to have you on the podcast with me. And if you guys want to follow Paris, you can follow her on Instagram at MasterYourMental. And you can also find her book. Where can you find your book?
So it's actually linked in my bio, but it's on Amazon. So it's called Crooked Illness, Lessons from Inside and Outside Hospital Walls.
All right, perfect. So you guys heard it, and you can follow her. And you can also follow on Rough Edges Instagram page at rough.edges.podcast. And stay tuned for more empowering episodes on Rough Edges. Thank you for listening to Rough Edges. Feel free to follow this podcast on Instagram at rough.edges.podcast or visit my blog at sarahifox.com. If you have any questions or further suggestions on how to make this podcast grow, you can email at rough.edges.podcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening and have a wonderful day.